aimed at psychiatrists trying to get us up to speed on what exists now, what can be done with telemedicine to reach underserved populations and people who can't access in-office visits for whatever reason. So it's an area of interest of mine.
I'm Kathleen Doyle. I'm the Executive Secretary for the State Board for Psychology and a few others. I administer the Psychotherapy Institutes as well. One of the things that you'll find in the back table is a practice alert on telepractice that has been developed by our department, and I'll tell you more about that later. But the part of it that I need to talk about is in terms of the regulation of the professions and what can be done and what can't be done and what could be the basis for a charge of professional misconduct if done improperly. And I know that, and you may be surprised at this, but the very first time telepractice was involved with the department in terms of talking about it, in terms of regents' actions and so on, was probably back in the 80s. In the 1990s, the regents had a demonstration of someone doing surgery in a hospital where the pathologist was sending the slides basically to another hospital for a review to determine how they would approach the brain surgery treatment. We've had a number of things. The first statement on telepractice was our department's statement for medicine back in the end of the 1990s. And over this time, we have spent a great deal of time working on that area.
Good. So that'll give you an overview of the afternoon. So we have a lot of, kind of what's possible, what the research says. Because a lot of people say, well, is it different? Can it be used for intervention? Can you do an assessment through video? So we really want you to leave here having some of those answers. And then we'll talk to a psychiatrist who just finished an 8-hour training, was it, on telepsychiatry. And then Dr. Doyle, who has the state perspective and sort of what the state is saying about telepractice. So with that, I'm going to do probably about 10 slides to give you a few models. Are we up? Okay, so affiliations and disclosures. I am the director of supportive televisiting services. So we have the New York Society for Ethical Culture, which is the society. Like most religions and educational organizations, often there's an independent nonprofit. So that's our social service board. Our social service board runs a lot of the programs. For example, we have a women's shelter, which is right behind you, that we operate. We also have Empowering Ethical Elders, which is free workshops for older adults. And there's brochures for both of those there. And so my role is the director of that program. So I have a televisiting room upstairs, and my job is to build stuff and think creatively and use my clinical knowledge and training to enrich programs, to build programs, and to pilot different ideas. So that's what I do there. I am also the president of Healthy Connection Psychological Services, PLLC. That's very new. And that is a partnership with another psychologist, Dr. Richard Juman, and it focuses exclusively on telepsychology. So I beam into skilled nursing facilities in upstate New York, way up by Canada, and I say, hi. And I'm able to do assessment and ongoing therapy for these wonderful folks who have never seen a psychologist and really did not have access to a New York psychologist. And that was not okay for me. It's not okay that people don't have this access. It's not okay. And it doesn't have to be. So I'm committed to building this in a way that we can start providing that access. And then, that's just my own little company. I'm my own PC. And then also I'm a staff psychologist at the Institute for Human Identity, where I see patients in person. And that's a primarily LGBTQ-focused therapy center that's in Chelsea on 26th Street and 8th Avenue. which it's wonderful if you can get there and see me for therapy, but most of the people can't get there and see me for therapy. And people are, struggling with their identity and don't have access to people who have the cultural competence to deal with that. And so one of the projects we're looking at is helping them go statewide for telemental health with an LGBTQ focus and specialty. So that's a lot of my hats. I'm also the president of Independent Practice Division, which is doing amazing. I'm also a huge fan of NYSPA, the New York State Psychological Association. We are in many ways the voice of psychology and for psychology in New York State, and that's very important. Good. So very quickly, I want to give you a few models, and there is a handout that has the core models or something like that. If you don't have it at your table, then they have them in the back, and here's some more. There's one color, one for each table. There's black and white for everyone. So just telepsychology is at the top. Telepsychology is a subset of telemental health. Telemental health includes telepsychiatry, maybe telesocial work, telepsychoanalysis. So these are all, psychology is a subset of those things. Telemedicine is the umbrella term above telemental health. So you might have telemedicine, you might have teledermatology, telecardiology. And then broader than that is the broader healthcare and the broader wellness sort of groups and organizations and movements. So that's just to give you a sense of where we are in the scheme of things. And so when you want to go out a little bit broader and develop alliances and allegiances with similar groups, then we could, she made a run for it, we could hang out with the psychiatrists. And those are some of the things I'm committed to as well, as working with other mental health professionals to move our shared goals forward. Thank you. Current applications, schools, hospitals, prisons, the military, and place of work. These are all active places for telepsychology. Some of the emerging ones are community centers, beaming into your local community center to be able to offer consultation or therapy. Churches, we're going to be launching church-based televisiting, which actually technically this is a faith-based organization. And then you're just one step away from telemental health. And then emergency response centers, homeless shelters, to be able to beam into a homeless shelter and work with someone in an ongoing way. Or what if someone doesn't have secure, stable housing over time, but the only thing that is secure and stable in their life is you?
Is that the right picture for a homeless shelter?
Oh, no. That's the, for those of you who watch the MTV Awards, that's the young fellow who was homeless. Who
yes, Miley Cyrus.
Miley Cyrus dedicated her award to. So yes, that is the right picture. Miley Cyrus dedicated her award to someone who was homeless. And so we can access this because for a lot of people, the only person who's stable in their life might be their psychologist. And so maybe if they could just beam into any community center and meet with you wherever they are, not where you are, that could be really helpful. And mobile, direct to device, anyone, anywhere, any device. Thank you. Next. A couple of models of psychology. So this is where it's helpful to have a model and something to anchor yourself to. So when you're thinking about what you want to do or what someone else is saying, come back to this model. Is it institution to institution? So am I beaming from Bellevue to Mount Sinai? Am I beaming from Mount Sinai to Rikers Island? Am I beaming? So it's institution to institution. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Good. Institution to individual. Am I Mount Sinai beaming into, Mrs. Give me a last name. Pitta. who is Pat's not doctor sister. So that's an institution saying, like the Institute for Human Identity is saying, we want to offer our services to individuals. Or is this individual to individual? So it's Dr. Pat Pitta beaming into, you know, do you have a name?
Mrs. Brown.
To Mrs. Brown. So that's individual doctor to individual patient. And as you're thinking about that, think about how things might be different in terms of the technology you're using, the safety protocols you might be implementing, the legal ramifications, the funding sources, the cultural competence. All these things shift and change. So this is just a nice little model that I put together to anchor yourself on. Thank you. So now some of the theoretical underpinnings of telepsychology. So this is kind of the stuff that I think about. I want to know what the legal implications are for my model, for what I'm proposing. What are the legal implications? What are the ethical implications? What is APA or New York State Psychological Association or the New York State Board of Psychology saying about telepractice, about telepsychology, about what I want to do? What are the financial implications? Who's paying? Who's paying me to do this? Am I doing this because I just want to do it and I love it and I set up my life so I can do that? Or do I want to do fee for service? Am I using a third party payer? Am I doing cash only? Am I doing a variety of third party payers? Is it grant funded? So what are the cultural implications? This is really important. Are you culturally competent in the technology? Do you know how to set up your computer? Do you know how to set up your patient's computer? Do you know how to troubleshoot them? Do you know how to model increasing your tolerance for distress when it doesn't work or when you're trying to figure it out? Can you be comfortable enough to model that for your patient and make sure your needs are met so you can be there for your patient? If you're beaming into some place that's way upstate New York that you've never been to, and you have someone coming in and you want to motivate them, use behavioral activation to get active and do things. One of the things I do is I go online, I pull up the website for the facility I'm beaming into, I look at their agenda for the day, and I say, oh, bingo, 4 p.m. So I have that knowing what's going on in their life and their environment. So when they're saying, oh, I'm a little fatigued today, I'm feeling very depressed, there's nothing to do, I'll be like, well, there's bingo at 4 p.m. That's what it says. And I can share my screen, too. So I can say, here's the schedule. You don't like bingo? How about, like the music thing at 5? How about you do that? Oh, okay, music's fine. Because I know what's going on in their environment. Also knowing things like what the weather's like, if there are any emergency things that have gone on. So you want to be aware of what's going on with them in their geography and in their setting. And also, are you beaming into a rural setting where a lot of people might, their entire life, work for one factory, which is very different from the experience here in Manhattan. So you want to be aware of these things. You want to know the technical competencies. You want to know the clinical competencies. How do you build rapport through video? How do you establish trust and a relationship? How do you make it real? How do you set that up? So things like if you've ever done online video, and a lot of times the camera is different from where you're looking at them. So a lot of times for people who don't know, the patient's like, why are you always looking like this? And it looks like you're rolling your eyes. Sometimes you look at me, but it usually looks like you don't care. And so things like that, you need to be competent. You need to demonstrate and know competence of how to use the technology and the clinical implications of that. We're psychologists. We're doing psychology. We want to be competent. We're ethically required to be competent in things we do. The technical competency, the clinical competency, and the social stuff. Like if you're working with people through video, depending on who you're working with, they might be very socially different from you. Whether you're a digital immigrant who has grown up with all this technology kind of the way it is. Or if you're, a digital native. Or if you're a digital immigrant, which means you didn't grow up, but you're kind of visiting here and kind of trying to learn stuff. You want to be aware of that, and things like having a social media policy. So like what happens when a patient wants to connect with you on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or stuff like that. You want to be able to think through all that stuff. And that's some of the competencies as well once you start putting yourself online and out there in this way. So that kind of goes all into telepsychology, or telepsychology. Telepsychology. Good. So next slide. Could we just reach over? Thanks. So this is really cool. I like this a lot. It's the 5 services for telepsychology. So this is when you get your menu together of what people are going to pay you for. These are the things you want to be thinking about. Assessment. Am I beaming in somewhere doing assessment? So am I making a determination about whether this person is very, very depressed and needs to come in for ongoing therapy? Or am I being able to sort of tell, a lot of times I think in terms of like jails, this person's fine, they're just really drunk. And they don't need 24-hour supervision, but keep an eye on them. So being able to do an assessment, maybe to be able to do a neuropsych assessment through video, because neuropsychologists have a very specialized skill set that's not readily available to everyone everywhere. So that's assessment. Intervention. So for us, that's usually therapy. For psychiatrists and some psychologists, and in New York State, eventually probably prescription writing as well. So being able to do interventions, to do therapy through video. Supervision. I'm really good at some things. I know people in this room are really great at some things, and we get a lot out of sharing that with people. But only so many people will come to your practice to get your knowledge. So you can offer ongoing supervision for someone who wants to get what you got. And you can do that through video. So you're not going to say, yeah, I'll work with you and come here every week and take 3 hours out of your workday, or I'll go to you and take 3 hours out of my workday. No, but I'll give you the 2 p.m. slot on Thursdays, because you know what, I'm kind of slow then. So it's not that big of a deal. So I can do the supervision. Or you can offer to supervise someone on an internship program and work towards solving the internship crisis. So all these things. Consultation, so someone has a specific case that just wants a second opinion on, or you have special knowledge about, you can do a consultation for that. And then psychoeducation and training. So these are, what I'm trying to do is give a little bit of structure to break things down, help you categorize things, help you anchor things, as you start listening to other people's thoughts and ideas and thinking about what you want to do. Good, next. So here are some media platforms. I'm not going to, video platforms. I can share these, but just to let you know, there are lots of them. There's Cisco Telepresence, Jabber. There's Movi, MedRT, VC, Forefront Telecare, Breakthrough.com. There's tons of them. All HIPAA compliant and off different levels of readiness to use. Next.
Do you have this written? Do you have it?
Yeah, we can send this out.
Okay.
Yeah. Hardware, monitors. You want to have like a screen. You want to have cameras, speakers, microphones, encoding stuff might be a separate box. And your workstation, setting up your environment. So we're not going to talk too much about that, but I just want you to know, have some sense of their software stuff, which is like the stuff that runs on the computer, and then there's hardware pieces. And when we do, for example, like a long training, we might go into the details of those. Good. Anything else? There's a couple of places for training. So I did a certification in telemental health through the Telemental Health Institute. And that's Dr. Marlene Mayhew, and she has amazing information. And so if you're serious about this, I suggest that you get training and you be able to demonstrate that. Because if something goes wrong and they say, how did you think you could do this? You want to be able to say, well, I took this training, I learned this is my plan, and demonstrate that. So there's also the Online Therapy Institute, the Zur Institute, the Northeast Region Telehealth Center. We have a ton ton of resources for you back there. But I just wanted to give you some models as we talk about things that are going on to help kind of make it feel less all over the place. Was that good? Is that helpful?
Yeah,
no?
that's great.
Okay, good. So that's it from me. I know Dan's got to leave soon, so if there are any questions specific for Dan or anything that I talked about, then we can do that. And then also, I see that Dr. Stephen Heiler, who is also a psychiatrist from Columbia and who led the training, also walked in. So maybe when he wants, he'll say hello. Good.
I'd like to ask a question since Cisco is offering this kind of service, and since you, Frank said you're HIPAA compliant, I'd like to know how can we really trust the, is it DoD kind of level of encryption? I mean, I frankly, I know a lot about computers because I've designed websites and stuff like that, but I also know how easy it is to hack in. I would never send anything that even identifies somebody as being a patient by email because it's open source, and the same for Skype. Could you tell us what can you guarantee is unhackable? You want this back?
I don't know that anything is unhackable in the real world, because every time we reach a security element level of protection, we have to build a new security level of protection. Because for every protective element, there is someone trying to get into it. I just know that we are a supplier of our nation's defense, which takes a lot of comfort in us. So it's just that element of the technology. We, of course, don't supply anything other than the technology. We're nothing more than the conduit.
Like this?
But, I mean, just look at our own news over the last 2 years. Look at Eric Snowden and what happened with that. It's not just, groups in China or the Syrian army or others that are trying to hack. We even had our own government doing its own activities, looking at things. So I think we just always have to be cognizant of the fact that at least we live in a country where we expect to have certain freedoms and abilities, but there will always be people who will be trying to get into those elements in order to somehow exploit them. That's the real world, that's what we live in. There is no definitive answer, in my opinion, other than what you want to do is make sure if you sign an agreement, if you're currently using one of these proprietary type systems, that you sign an agreement online, and when you click that box, yes, I agree with the terms, who here has ever, and hands went up earlier, all right? So we know that people in this room use video for different things, right? How many of you have ever read the terms and conditions of your rights, or did you just click the box? How many just clicked the box? Okay. I want you to go back to those, and I want you to look at the terms and conditions, because for all of you to know, you have given rights to those companies to record everything you do.
Yeah.
Everything you do, they have the right to record.
And what's your choice?
What's your choice? You don't get the service.
Exactly.
Right? So what you need is you need to be able to make sure that whatever you go into, that you have an agreement with that company. There has to be an agreement with that company. Then they're not going to record you. All right? And that does exist. It does exist. And go to Frank for that. We don't offer that service as a company. We offer the plumbing, but we don't offer services of, like your own little. We just don't do that stuff. We have telepresence, and that's what we do. So just be extremely careful. We talk about quality of service, but number one, I will always say, is security. And just make sure your security is the best it can be. And we live in a world where every element of security is consistently attacked on a daily basis. Daily basis, to get information to tear down governments. Does anybody really care about who you're talking to on the internet today with your psychology? Who knows? But it's something that I think ethically, it was up there, ethical, you have to be careful with that. Ethically, for your patient, for your contact, you want them to feel comfortable enough to be able to talk to you. It is a risky world. That's the best way I could put it. It's a risky world.
How secure is Twitter or Skype? Can you, from 0 to? No.
0.
Same answer.
0.
It's a dangerous world. We operate the best we can and ethically, and that's why governments, we have representatives, that's why governments set up regulations. That's why there are elements inside a government to say, hey, be careful when you go into this, because you need to be careful when you go into this. So, you know, it's not that we should ever say, don't do it because everybody's going to hack you. That's not the truth. But there is the truth that security is a key element in order to have you, for your practice. It's just important. Yeah.
What does being careful mean?
Being careful means reading your terms and conditions. Being careful means making sure that you at least get the best quality security element you can for your service that you're going to do. You know, just don't arbitrarily say, yeah, that looks good. I'll sign on to that one. You know, just don't arbitrarily, but actually look at what you're going to do and make the best conscious decision. That's, honestly, that's the world we live in.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the financial part. How much you have to invest for individual, how much money is going to cost to invest in individual practice to get all these apparatuses, all the equipment, training, and how long would it take to get back your money, and how much you have to charge? I mean, it's something like we all think of the financial part, and it's important to define it, and if you work that out, it's an issue that we have to think and develop.
There are people in this room that are doing it at no cost right now. Because they're using what is available on the internet right now, they're just doing it. Okay, so they're just doing it. There are people that, I don't use words like that. That's a bad word in my territory. So, you know what, there's things called software as a service. You know, there are companies that will offer you services that you pay for, and they will give you the level of encryption that you're looking for, and they will give you that level of comfort and the agreement that they will not record anything. So it's very cheap to get into this. When you add up the value, it's very cheap to get into it. It really comes down to what equipment you want to use. You know, there was a picture up here of a person with a personal device on their desk, right? That's a beautiful device. It costs more than your laptop does, right? But it's a nice device. What level do you want to go? Do you want to use a computer, or do you want to use a telepresence unit? What do you want to use? It really comes down to what your financial issue is and how you're going to best fit into it if you're going to go into that area.
Would you define the telepresence? I don't know anything of these things.
Telepresence is, okay, I see you very well. We're on 1080p right now. We're on high definition right now. I see you very well. Or I can see the jitter. Right. Do I do that well? You know, have you seen that video? Right. Telepresence is the ability to be in presence with you where my lips and my voice are going at the same time, and that you can fully understand and determine by my facial features and everything what's really going on, rather than a 5-second latency delay to where my facial expressions are not going with my words and you may miss what I'm really saying. I'm in the presence with you right now because we're human beings talking to each other. I want that same element in video. If I don't have it, I'm not going to do it.
Good.
That's the best way I've ever defined that.
I just wanted to say, when you said to, you know, with your caveat about signing, I agree with. You know, in many instances, we are protective of our patients, and we feel that we have to protect them from any potential harm, which even with informed consent, they might not realize what they're consenting to. And so there's the other side of this too. It's not just that we say, and actually if you're a conduit to saying to them, you can use this equipment, you also have some kind of a responsibility. I mean, like if you have a patient and they say, I'm going to commit suicide, you somehow feel, and I think most mental health people would feel they have to try to intervene and save their life. Well, you know, when you're saying to them, okay, you can use Skype, you can email with me, you are really presenting them with a situation where they may consent to something which they should not be consenting because it's harmful to them.
Yeah, and I think all of that information is going to come out of this side of the room today, because they're really going to give you the background of what's happening here, and also the regulatory side on how this is being looked at on many different levels. All right, I have to go to Seattle. I'm really sorry I can't stay for the whole thing, but I have to get out there for this dinner tonight. Thank you very much for having me here. Good luck with the panel, and I hope that all of you will embrace technology, but always remember one thing. Video is not a replacement for the real thing. We can't replace everything with video. I would never suggest that someone 100% completely replace things with video. There are times that I have to see a doctor. I don't have a primary care physician, but Mount Sinai, Dr. Fuster, and Dr. Vivek Reddy gave me a quality of life with an experimental heart surgery. It's why I'm here today. So there are times I have to go in those doors and do those things. There are times I have to see, I have a psychiatrist that I go and see because I have ADD. You know, I used to chase squirrels all over the place, right? So, you know, I have ADD and I have to see this guy every 2 months to get a prescription, and it's what I do. I see him in person. This is not something that he just, you know, in Florida they can't just like give you the drugs when you want.
There's an interesting article on ADD today and dopamine and things in the New York Times.
Really? Okay. I'll read that on the plane. All right, so have a great one. Never replace life with video, but use video.
Heading out, we have Dr. Stephen Heiler, who we collaborated with and did the telepsychiatry training, where we trained 25 psychiatrists on how to do telepsychiatry. And just so we know, psychiatry is kicking our butt. So we're catching up. And I'm so excited that we have such a big turnout. We have to go over here, I'm being told. We have such a big turnout today that we can start changing our profession as well. Dr. Heiler?
Thank you very much. It's very encouraging to see.
All print over your
Yeah, maybe just get into one of these spaces here.
Is that better?
Yeah.
It's better because the light's not in my eyes either. Is this mic on okay? Yes. Okay, I'm very encouraged by the turnout here on this nasty day and with terrible traffic and everything else. A couple of words about myself and psychiatry and what I've been doing in that. I started out with Office of Mental Health about the year 2000. I worked for New York State Psychiatric and the Office of Mental Health, and we had what we call a telepsychiatry consultation service. Our host site was at the Psychiatric Institute and Columbia Department of Psychiatry, and what we did is we did consultations on patients across the state who were located in 1, rural community mental health centers, 2, or multiple state facilities or inpatient facilities of New York Office of Mental Health, and 3, the mental health units of the maximum security prisons, where, as you probably know, most of our serious chronic mentally ill are residing now as compared to in the state hospitals. So setting up the consult service, what we did is that when there was a difficult patient or a question, we would get the consultation, and rather than travel up to these different places, some of which are hard to reach and expensive to reach, we would connect by video conferencing to do a consultation online. And over the course of about 10 years, we did several hundred, maybe even several thousand of these, myself doing many of them myself, where I felt that I was able to serve as consultant, clinician, and when I couldn't, I would secure a person who was on the Columbia faculty who might have been more of a specialist or possibly a neurologist or an internist or cardiologist to do the consult. So I got the experience of learning how to do these things. Just to give you an idea, you may have heard some of it, when we started out, it cost us $30,000 to $40,000 per site, to set up a site there. We were using equipment by a company called PictureTel that had a Concorde 4500, and it cost $30,000 to $40,000 with a 40-inch cathode ray tube that weighed 250 pounds. Now, over the course of the also, very important, we did not trust the internet at that point. So we were using dedicated T1 and ISDN lines, or multiple ISDN lines, in order to have secure and a large data path. Now, the internet came in just around that time, and basically, by the year 2009 or so, the internet and the encryption got so good that OMH was willing to say we don't have to use just T1 lines anymore.